It started like any other audition day on Spain's Got Talent. Crowds buzzed with anticipation, hopeful contestants lined the hallways, and the judges took their seats, ready to be entertained or underwhelmed. But no one, not the audience, not the crew, not even the seasoned panel, could have predicted what was about to unfold. He walked in with quiet steps, his presence cloaked in calm. He wasn't wearing flashy clothes, no sequins or feathers. Just a simple black kung fu uniform, his hair tied neatly, eyes focused like a tiger preparing to strike. He didn't need to announce himself. His very posture did the talking. The host whispered to a producer, "Is this guy for real?" Backstage, someone muttered, "Maybe he's just gonna break a board or two." But the moment he bowed and raised his hands into the salute of traditional kung fu, the energy in the room shifted. It was subtle but undeniable. As if the air itself had paused, waiting for something different. His name? Wei Liang. From Seville, though his family lineage stretched back to the Shaolin temples of Hunan, China. He was only 25, but already, his mastery over martial arts rivaled those with decades of experience. He grew up with immigrant parents who ran a small tea shop. While other kids played football in the streets, Wei practiced forms in the backyard, watched over by his grandfather, a former monk who once trained at Shaolin himself. That background mattered. Because what the audience didn't know yet was that they weren't about to watch a performance. They were about to witness a spiritual discipline delivered with explosive precision. He stood in the center of the stage, closed his eyes, and took one deep breath. And then, he moved. Faster than anyone could follow, he shifted into a tiger form. His arms slashed through the air, each motion clean, calculated, powerful. His feet stomped in rhythm, echoing ancient war drums. One moment he was leaping into the crane stance, delicate and controlled. The next, he flowed into snake, fluid, evasive, mesmerizing. Gasps rose from the audience. But it was when he stopped mid-air, yes, mid-air, after a spinning crescent kick, hovering for just a split second before landing like a feather, that the crowd lost it. Applause burst forth like thunder. Judges' jaws dropped. Then came the weapons. He drew twin butterfly swords, spinning them around with deadly grace. Not for violence, but for demonstration, like an artist with brushes painting air. Each slash was a signature. Each twirl a statement. He danced with the blades, jumping, rolling, ducking, slicing invisible enemies with mathematical precision. He dropped them, and without pause, snapped into a staff form. The staff flew through his fingers like it was alive. One end struck low, the other high, the middle twisting around his body. At one point, he let go completely, and the staff spun in the air before landing back in his grip. Not once, but twice. And still, he wasn't done. He paused, and breathed. Then, the final act. He brought out a piece of rebar, a solid metal rod, and bent it with his throat. Yes, his throat. The audience went silent. It was a test of internal strength, of chi, of the discipline only elite martial artists dared attempt. The judges leaned forward, eyes wide. Wei placed the rod against his throat, pushed forward slowly, deliberately. The tension was unbearable. Every person in the theater held their breath. Then, snap, the rod cracked. It bent like a noodle. He stood tall, triumphant, but humble. He bowed deeply to the audience. The entire room stood in unison, erupting into a standing ovation. It wasn't just appreciation, it was respect. The judges were stunned. One whispered, "I've never seen anything like that." Another wiped a tear, he's not just a fighter. He's a poet." They voted yes. Of course they did. For yes. Unanimous. But Wei didn't smile. Not yet. Because this was only the beginning. Backstage, reporters swarmed. Contestants congratulated him. Even the host looked shell-shocked. But Wei quietly made his way to a corner, knelt down, and offered a short prayer. Not to win. Not for fame. But for gratitude. To the ancestors. To the masters before him. And to the art that had saved his life. Because what no one knew yet was the story behind that calm, composed face. And it wasn't pretty. Long before Wei Liang ever stepped onto a stage, long before the bright lights and the standing ovation, there was darkness. The kind of darkness that shapes you. The kind that either breaks you, or makes you. Wei was born in the back room of a tea house in Seville's Chinatown district. His parents had immigrated from China with nothing but dreams and a few family heirlooms, one of which was a torn Shaolin robe passed down from Wei's grandfather. The robe wasn't flashy, it was worn, faded, threadbare. But to his grandfather, it represented honor. Sacrifice. A lineage of warriors, monks, philosophers. As a child, Wei didn't understand any of that. He just knew they were poor. Really poor. The kind of poor where dinner was rice and pickled vegetables 5 nights a week. The kind of poor where shoes had holes and jackets were 2 sizes too small. And to make it worse, Wei was different. Different from the Spanish kids who called him names. Different from the Chinese kids who thought he was too soft. His only escape was martial arts movies. Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Donnie Yen. He would sit in the back of the tea house after school, surrounded by the scent of oolong and jasmine, watching worn-out VHS tapes until his eyes ached. But it wasn't until his grandfather began training him at age 7 that the transformation began. His grandfather was a quiet man. He spoke in proverbs more than full sentences. His hands were like iron, but his touch was always gentle. He didn't smile much. But when he did, it lit up a room. The first lesson was pain. Horse stance, his grandfather said. Wei held it. 1 minute. 2. 5. His legs screamed. His arms trembled. But his grandfather only said, stillness is strength. Day after day. Week after week. No belts. No praise. Just practice. Forms. Breath. Stillness. Movement. And pain. By the time Wei was 10, he could hold a full plank for 20 minutes. At 11, he could break a board with a palm strike. At 12, he could disarm an adult with a wooden staff. But it wasn't about fighting. It was about control. Discipline. Honor. Still, the world didn't care. At school, bullies taunted him relentlessly. Called him Bruce P. and Chinito. One day, they cornered him behind the gym. 5 of them. Bigger. Older. They pushed him. Laughed. He didn't fight back. He stood still. Just like his grandfather taught him. They threw him down. Kicked him. Still, he didn't respond. But that night, he went home with a black eye and a split lip. His grandfather didn't ask questions. He only handed Wei a towel and said, next time, you may block. And the next time came soon. The same bullies tried again. This time, Wei dodged. Then blocked. Then disarmed their leader without throwing a single punch. He didn't brag. He didn't smile. He just walked away. And that's when everything changed. Word spread. The bullies never bothered him again. Teachers started noticing. The local dojo invited him to compete. But he refused. I am not a trophy fighter, he told them. Instead, he kept training. Quietly. Daily. By 17, he could perform aerial butterfly kicks, triple spinning sweeps, and vertical jumps that touched the ceiling. His control was so precise, he could snuff out candles with his fists, without touching the wick. But life, as always, had a way of testing the strong. One winter, his grandfather fell ill. The doctors said it was late-stage lung cancer. By the time they caught it, there was nothing they could do. Wei was devastated. His mentor. His guide. His only real father figure, fading before his eyes. And in his final days, his grandfather called him to his bedside. Promise me, he whispered. You will show the world what this art means. Not for fame. Not for money. But for truth. Wei nodded. But he didn't cry. He bowed. And after the funeral, he vanished from the world for nearly a year. He went to the mountains of Granada. Lived alone in a monastery that allowed him to train in silence. He meditated. Fasted. Practiced. Day and night. In snow and sun. He fought shadows. Fought himself. Fought his doubts. And when he emerged, he was no longer just a martial artist. He was a warrior of the spirit. The audition for Spain's Got Talent came by accident. He was performing a free demonstration in a community center when a producer happened to pass by. She was floored. Approached him. Asked him to audition. At first, he said no. But then he remembered his grandfather's words. Show the world. And so, he did. And that performance was only the beginning. Because now, he wasn't just Wei Liang, the quiet kid from the tea house. He was the kung fu warrior. And the world was about to know his name. The next round was televised live. By now, the name Wei Liang was echoing through Spain like wildfire. Clips of his audition had gone viral, shared on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Millions watched as the silent warrior bent metal with his throat and danced through the air like a wraith. Every outlet was talking about him. Some called him the Shaolin spectacle. Others named him the modern monk. But none of it seemed to faze him. While the world talked, Wei trained. He woke up before dawn. Ran 10 kilometers. Meditated on cliffs as the sun rose. Then began his forms. 1,000 repetitions. Then weapons. Then strength. Then breath work. No cameras. No distractions. Because fame had never been his pursuit. Only mastery. The second performance had to be different. Bigger. Not in spectacle, but in message. So he designed a sequence unlike anything ever seen on a talent show. Not a routine. A story. Told through martial movement. The night of the live show, tension was electric. The judges remembered him. Of course they did. But they didn't expect what came next. The lights dimmed. Then silence. And out of that darkness, a single gong. Wei entered, dressed not in black, but white. Pure white. A symbol of rebirth. He moved slowly at first. Each step deliberate. Then faster. His hand sliced air, then flowed like water. He transitioned through Wing Chun, Northern Shaolin, Hung Gar. It was a history lesson told through his body. Then the stage exploded with fire. Flames erupted in rings around him. The audience gasped. Wei didn't flinch. He leaped through one ring with a 540 kick. Spun. Landed inside a smaller ring. Then another. Then another. The rings closed in. He had seconds to escape. He flipped over one. Dove under another. His movements were not just agile, they were impossibly calculated. Then came the centerpiece, the Sword of Wind. A custom-forged gem, thin as a reed but deadly sharp. Wei wielded it not like a weapon, but like a pen. He wrote calligraphy in air, ancient Chinese characters formed by the motion of his blade. Behind him, a holographic trail visualized his strokes. Peace, honor, discipline, and finally, family. Each motion corresponded to a word. Each stroke perfect. The crowd went silent. Then, a final form, Dragon Awakens. A combination of explosive footwork, rapid-fire fists, twisting jump kicks, and the roar of a final strike so loud, you could feel it in your chest. And then, stillness. Complete, deafening stillness. Wei stood motionless, sword lowered, head bowed. 30 full seconds passed before the audience erupted. Judges rose. One clapped with both hands and feet. The youngest judge, known for being harsh, simply whispered, "What are you?" Wei finally spoke. For the first time on stage. "I am a student." That was all. And it was everything. The judges didn't just give him yes. They gave him the golden buzzer. Confetti rained. But again, Wei did not smile for fame. Only for fulfillment. Backstage, a reporter asked him, "Where does this come from? How do you do this?" He looked into the camera and said, "It's not me. It's my grandfather. It's my ancestors. It's everyone who couldn't speak, so I move for them." Those words struck deep. Overnight, fan pages erupted. Kids started mimicking his forms. A hashtag was born, #MoveLikeWei. Even celebrities posted reactions. Some tried his techniques. Others simply watched in awe. Martial arts schools saw record sign-ups. And in Seville, a small tea house received more visitors than ever before. People took photos beside a worn Shaolin robe in a glass frame, left flowers, bowed their heads. Wei wasn't just changing the competition. He was awakening a culture. And the finals were now just weeks away. The producers wanted spectacle. They offered special effects, fireballs, laser shows. Wei declined. Instead, he returned to the mountains. This time, to the place where he had scattered his grandfather's ashes. He trained with chains on his arms. He walked barefoot over gravel paths. He meditated under waterfalls. And in that quiet, he remembered a story his grandfather told him long ago. About a monk who defeated an army with no sword. About a boy who became a dragon. About truth over power. He returned stronger. Not in muscle, but in soul. And the night of the finals? He was ready. But what he would reveal? No one was ready for that. The night of the finals arrived. It was more than a show now. It was a moment, etched into the calendar of those who had followed Wei Liang from that very first silent walk on stage to the storm of fire he leapt through. The world waited, not just to be entertained, but to be changed. In the weeks leading up to the finale, speculation was everywhere. Would he do backflips off wires? Smash bricks with his fists? Summon fire? Fly? But Wei remained invisible. No social media. No interviews. No teasers. He simply trained. And when the cameras turned on, the stadium was silent, not with boredom, but with reverence. You could feel it in the air. Then, the stage went black. No music. No lights. And out of that void, Wei Liang appeared. Not descending from the ceiling. Not walking through flames. Just standing, center stage. Barefoot. Shirtless. Scarred. Calm. And this time, he brought something else. A chair. He sat. Then, he spoke. "Tonight," he said, "you expect motion. But tonight, I bring stillness." Gasps from the crowd. Then, he bowed. Stood. And raised his arms. A screen behind him lit up. Grainy black and white footage. A tea house. A little boy. An old man with hands of steel. It was real. Home footage. Unseen until now. Wei's story played on screen, silent, while he began to move. Slowly. Tai Chi slow. Each motion, deliberate. Each stance, rooted like a tree. He didn't break bricks. He broke time. He didn't fly. He floated through breath. Behind him, the footage played. His first horse stance. His first injury. His grandfather laughing. His grandfather dying. Wei did not cry. But his movement screamed grief and gratitude. Then, the tempo changed. He dropped to the floor. One leg extended. He spun. Then rose. Lightning-fast punches. Elbow strikes. Snap kicks. Forms blurred. Wing Chun into tiger. Mantis into drunken fist. Crane into dragon. Every form, fused. Not just technique, but expression. A martial artist who had become a poet. And then, he stopped. Completely. The screen behind him went dark. And Wei fell to his knees. Head bowed. Palms pressed. He whispered something in Mandarin. No one understood. But everyone felt it. Then, he stood. One final motion. He lifted his arms, spun with precision, and struck a pose. His grandfather's pose. From the torn robe. From the old footage. From history. Time stood still. And then, silence. The crowd didn't cheer. Not at first. They wept. Even the judges. Tears on faces that had seen 1,000 acts. Because Wei didn't perform. He transformed. And when the clapping began, it was thunder. A standing ovation not for a man who kicked or flipped, but for a soul who revealed. One judge, fighting emotion, finally asked, What did that mean? Wei answered simply. It means, I forgive. I remember. I continue. The results were announced the next day. Wei Liang won. Unanimous vote. He didn't cry. He didn't celebrate. He bowed. And said, this trophy belongs to the teachers who had none. To the warriors who never fought. To the quiet ones. After the win, he vanished for weeks. Some said he went to a monastery. Some said he returned to China. Others claimed he trained in Africa with stick-fighting tribes. But the truth? He went home. Back to Seville. Back to the tea house. He reopened it. Taught kids in the back room. No charge. Just discipline, breath, and honor. And he placed the trophy, not on a shelf, but at the feet of his grandfather's robe. Dust gathered. Because that's what Wei wanted. Not fame. Not interviews. Not Netflix deals. Just silence. Years later, a student would ask him, why did you do it? And Wei, now older, now smiling more, would say, to show the world that Kung Fu is not about fighting. It's about becoming. And the legend of the Kung Fu warrior? Only grew.